morning, everybody, and welcome to Azure Flash News, episode 75. It is September.
Look at, we've got Inception going on.
I know it's well. That's not us, actually. See, that's last.
But
week.
apparently, I like to wear black shirts on Fridays because I'm seeing a pattern.
Black Shirt Friday.
I'm feeling very Scott.
Guthrie. Well,
yeah,
he wears red.
I know,
He wears
but I
red.
can't wear
We're
red.
red.
I can't. I have to do something different, right?
You're going black.
Of course, in the winter, it's all about the V-neck sweater. So.
True. That would be Steve Jobs.
I think no, he wore turtlenecks. I'm V-necks.
Oh, V-neck.
I think.
Oh, yes, that's right.
I think I officially own one in every color.
I know. Anyway,
well, there was a sale at Old Navy, so I went
Why
and bought every single one I could.
Yeah,
I love them. They're easy. You throw them on. You don't have to worry
done.
about anything. Done. Exactly. Anyway, welcome. Happy Friday.
Wardrobe information.
Yeah, more than you wanted to know. I'm a little slap happy today. My wife is in Nashville, so I've been single parenting and totally. Well, not bachelor. It's not bachelor style because I'm not eating bachelor chow, as made famous by Futurama.
Bachelor chow? I don't even want to know what that is.
It looks like dog food.
Okay. So,
I digress.
Are we going to do a show today?
We're going to do a show today.
Okay. So
today is September the 4th.
No, it's
6th.
not.
It's the 6th, sorry.
It's September 6th, and we have some really good announcements today.
We do. It's all about quality, not quantity. So we are going to be a little bit more succinct today than we traditionally would be in terms of number of announcements. As we get ready for, we've got some, what is it, Ignite coming up? Is that the conference that's on next on the radar? So. Ignite conference. So, yeah. Obviously, you know, we tend to
build. That was in spring.
Yep. We do tend to have a moratorium sometimes on big splash announcements, just because we like to save those for our customer-facing conferences. But in the meantime, we do have some good stuff. We have an acquisition announcement, which you may or may not have heard of. We've got some, I think, just color commentary in regards to some of our cognitive service capabilities.
Although that's an announcement, though.
Yeah, fair enough. This updates around some cost controls solutions, and last but not least, again, more color commentary, I think, around some of your DR implementation capabilities and how you can reduce and be more.
Yeah,
so
good stuff. All right, let's dive in. So I have used this tool.
Okay.
I had a customer.
Okay.
This tool, Movair.
Yep.
We bought it.
That's right. So Microsoft moved to acquire Movair. To add that product to our suite of services around migration and essentially lift and shift opportunities. So we have Azure Migrate, we've got Azure Site Recovery, and quite often I think you would hear us as CSAs or as Microsoft even talk about Movair to move workloads from location A to location B. And notice I didn't say from on-prem.
Yeah.
I say A to B because it can be from on-prem to on-prem, different data center.
Sure.
It can be from on-prem to the cloud. It can be from Azure to Azure, it can be from AWS to Azure. You get the picture, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Movair is another tool in that tool set, if you will, right tool for the job to help customers get their workloads from A to B. Yep. So tell me what
let's see. Some of the capabilities I remember about Movair is that Movair was actually able to interrogate your virtual machines and tell you what's on them.
Okay.
So in other words, and also who they're talking to. So we have some of those capabilities in Azure Migrate.
Yep.
But Movair also could tell you things like what version of the .NET framework you were using.
Okay.
Some of the dependency tracking.
Okay. It's huge.
Yeah. So
right?
you kind of understand. And what I mean is the application app stack.
Which is big, right? Because if you migrate your application and forget like Newtonsoft.json or something like that, right? All of a sudden things break and you're like, well. It worked on-prem, or it worked on the infamous, it worked on my laptop, right?
Yep. And so sometimes if you're trying to figure out, for instance, if an application will work, if it's a web app, well, it can actually tell that it's a web app. And then it might even be able to give you an idea about whether it would work in app service.
Right on. Yeah.
So,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So not directly. I don't think it says good to go on app service. I think it just basically says
warning.
Here's some of the dependencies. Yeah, those kinds of things. In other words, you are using .NET Framework, or you aren't, or here's the version, stuff like that. So to give you an idea of the the catalog of applications, it can help you build your CMDB.
So you're doing an inventory assessment.
An inventory assessment.
Okay.
Helps you understand what you've got.
Yeah.
It is, I think, Movair might now have an agentless capability, but it was mostly agent full. And the reason why it's agent full is because you can interrogate more of the virtual machine
Oh yeah,
when you have an agent.
absolutely.
So I know that's always a bit of heartburn for people to deploy code essentially
Into their data center.
into
There's
their data
concerns
center
about,
everywhere.
is it nefarious? Is it trusted?
Yeah.
Is it where
And also,
where is it downloading dependencies from?
could you accidentally break something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
When you install something, is it
Yeah.
installing dependencies like a newer version of, again, I
Yeah.
don't know why I keep using JSON Newton's Huff, but
Why not? It's a good one. But for instance, but anyway, as far as I understand, this Mover tool, they mitigate that in some
Okay.
way. So in other words, like, oh, it needs, like for instance, if it needed, you know, .NET Framework 4.5, we all know that when you install version 4.5 of the .NET Framework, you have to uninstall version
Oh,
3
yes,
or
yes,
whatever.
yes, yes.
And so even though you're using version 3 in your app, if you install 4.5, version 3 is actually served out of the 4.5 version.
Right.
Anyway, it's kind of this weird little thing that we get in .NET Framework, which is one of the reasons why you should move to .NET Core.
That's right.
But we won't go into that.
Or at least stay current if you can.
Yeah,
Right. One of the
that's
two.
right. But anyway, so Mover is available in our, like it's an acquisition of ours.
Yep.
We don't really have a lot of great details, you know, about like.
It's a good strategic, I think, play for
Yeah.
Microsoft. What makes me kind of chuckle is when I looked at the announcements and I saw some of the, you know, if you follow some of the financial, you know, news, right, whatever they show up and throw up sometimes, right, some of the news sites, and they were calling it Microsoft acquires startup Mover. I'm like, wait a minute, startup? They're 11 years old.
Yeah.
How is that a startup? I mean, what qualifies it? Apparently, somebody didn't do their homework, is what I'd say. Somebody was pretty lazy in terms of throwing it, and I don't know if it was from an Associated Press feed or where I got that information from. It was just funny. I'm like, wait a minute, Mover. Last time I checked, I don't think they're a startup anymore.
No,
But,
they've been
I mean,
around
they're from a maturity perspective. They may act like a startup. They're nimble. They were, you know, quick to respond to customer needs, that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I don't think 11 years old qualifies as a startup. Otherwise, my daughter is still a startup.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So anyway, so check back later as this kind of unfolds. As we kind
you
of
will
like,
hear it here, hopefully first, if not second.
Yeah, we'll kind of hear more information about what this means to current Mover customers and people that want to use the technology. So.
Yep.
Okay, cool, man.
Right
awesome.
On.
All right.
Okay, so.
This is probably
really cool.
This may be the coolest announcement we have this week.
I would agree. And when I think about some of the pains that I've gone through in the past, you know, optical character recognition is one mechanism. It's a pattern matching algorithm that's used to identify characters, right? And you can do it based on less than, you know, clear, precise, that kind of thing. But when you start to get into like handwritten notes, any kind of handwriting, things go kind of off the rails pretty fast, right? I mean, when you think about the degree of confidence, if it recognizes the characters at all, the degree of confidence that it has is going to be, in some cases, especially medical forms, right? Think about some of those things, legal forms. Man, oh man, it drops, you know, unfortunately pretty fast. Now, we've got new capabilities, not brand new, right? Form recognizer it's new but not brand new, right?
No.
So I mean, I don't know what I would call that. It's out of its infancy for sure.
Yeah.
But
I was just going to say, you can now have mixed mode.
Which is cool.
Yeah. So in other words, you can have both content, a form that has both OCR and handwritten all together.
So basically types, what is it? Not true type fonts, because obviously there's other fonts, but
they might
typeset
be
fonts.
PDFs or JPEGs or something like that.
Somebody smarter than me in that space, I'm sure, knows the term.
Yep.
But yeah, it's basically, you know, a font-based type in combination with handwriting. So again, I go back to medical forms, financial forms, legal forms, you know, packing slips. There's a whole bunch of different, you know, cases where, you know, sign here, sign here, sign here, or fill in your personal information as a release form, that kind of stuff, right? And you don't want to have to go through two swaps of this. You basically want to do it once, one and done, right? And I can think of cases where maybe your documents are on legal hold and you've got to go through and catalog and index and make them searchable, but now you've got this challenge because there's some handwriting in there.
Yeah.
Well, challenge no more.
Yeah, and we can focus on the content here for just a second. You'll notice here's an example.
Oh, it's a great example.
Yeah, this is a good one. This is a career day or career fair form for Avanade.
Yep.
And so it says, hey, we would love to get some information about you. And so a career recruit or
profile.
Yeah. And so the form says, for those of you who aren't watching, the form says first name colon, and then there's a box underneath it,
Yep.
and the candidate wrote Sierra. And then over on the right, it says last name colon, and there's a box, Jones. And so this form is both text
Yep.
from that was printed on the form to begin
Pre-printed.
with,
Yep.
and then the candidate wrote in there their name and their company and whatever.
Email. Yep.
Yeah,
Telephone.
and then the content you get back from Form Recognizer is first name Sierra, last name Jones. So in other words, Form Recognizer noticed that first name went with this box, and then it said, oh well, I need to put first name with Sierra.
Yep.
Right?
Like following first name, like there's a proximity rating or there's something
Right.
associated with that,
Right.
so it can be deterministic on what that value
Yeah.
contextually was meant to
Yep.
be.
Right. And so that's the AI. Like,
That's
I mean,
cool.
we've been reading text off of letters
Yeah,
at the post office
right,
for
right.
a long time.
Right,
So,
yeah.
which is great.
You've
but-
been reading letters
well-
from the post office.
Well,
Are
I
you
just
going
open,
to steal a mail?
I open up people's mail. It's kind of interesting.
Dude, that's a federal offense. Don't say that.
Oh no, I don't do that. No, what I'm saying is the post office has been reading addresses
Oh yeah.
on pieces of mail
Right,
for
right.
a long time.
Long time. Yes, that's
But
true.
the difference here is that at the post office, they know exactly what's supposed to be on there and in
Exactly.
what format.
Yep.
And
there is
so-
a prescribed format for
Right.
it, right? I mean, we used to learn that in school. I don't think they learn it anymore, but how you would, literally in certain cases, like if you were addressing somebody in the government, if you
Right.
were, right, there was specific formats. And I think that was the rationale behind it, was because if you kept to that format, it became much easier to
Yes. Well, and-
deduce what
I mean,
that address was.
Yeah, right. Like standardizing the state
Yeah.
abbreviation.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And zip codes. But on Form Recognizer, though, it doesn't know anything about the form, and it notices that first name is Sierra, last name is Jones, and not that first name was across the way over there at Jones.
Right,
So not only does it read first name and it reads Sierra, first name being text,
right,
and Sierra being handwritten script, but
right.
it also says those go together.
Yeah, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And even and I understand there might be some queue-based logic here. Where when I say queue, I don't mean put it into a queue. I mean it's queuing off of, in this case, maybe the colons, right? But then you go down to
Sure.
the bottom and it says confirm consent, and there's no colon after it, and yet it recognizes that confirm consent has a signature. It doesn't say
Mhm.
sign here. Notice it doesn't say sign here. It says confirm consent,
Yeah.
Sierra J.
Yeah.
So they're definitely doing some really interesting. I would be so morbidly curious to know behind
Yeah.
the scenes how this all kind
Yeah.
of unfolds.
I mean, it's once you kind of stop and look, like you think you're like, oh yeah, okay, whatever, it did some OCR.
Yeah.
But if you stop
Oh,
for
no.
a second and you realize that this is not just OCR, like this wasn't a pre-programmed form.
Right.
This is a free form that they just scanned and it figured out what the heck was on it and what was interesting.
Yeah.
And you notice it didn't say stay connected with Avanade.
Exactly.
Yes,
That's the other
you may
thing.
have
yes.
information not provided. No. It knows what the form is on here and figures it out. It's
Totally.
pretty cool. So if you have some forms and the data on there is valuable, but you don't want to describe the form but you want to get the data off of it, this is the way to do it.
So it's so cool. So expanding your available data set, so you can take the forms, right? I think opportunistically, what can you do with this, right? So you can basically take a bunch of different types of documents from this one application. You're not basically spinning up new applications every time you have a type of document, right?
Yeah.
You can avoid manual digitization of handwritten forms, right? So instead of turning it into, instead of scanning it, either manually doing a conversion or programmatically trying to do a conversion, or vice versa if you want to go the other way. You don't have to do that next time, right? So you've got name value key pairs that you can basically identify the handwritten aspects of it. But the data set is the biggest piece, right? So expanding your data set from two mixed mode forms, right? Instead of
Pull those
one
in,
for
use
one,
that
one for
data.
the other. Exactly.
Yeah,
So I
use
think
those.
there's some really cool opportunities here. In this particular case, I like the example that they gave because they show the flexibility and the power of being able to differentiate between static content or boilerplate content, the interactive content, and then even cases where it's not completely identifiable, at least, there's no cues to look for.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool.
The other thing they point out is don't be afraid now to have mixed or handwritten applications. So in
Right.
other words, if it makes sense now to just let somebody write on their handwritten
Yeah.
and then use Form Recognizer,
Boom.
that way you don't have to hand somebody an iPad or a Windows device
Oh.
and say, type this in,
Right.
because the whole point is that you're trying to have them type it in so that you have usable data.
Yeah, exactly.
Just give them a piece of paper, let them fill it
Yeah.
out, and use Form Recognizer.
Yep, boom, done.
So-
Right? That's really cool. I can dig that. Oh, excuse you.
Excuse me. Okay.
Cognitive. Love it.
Yeah, very cool. We can just keep doing cool stuff there all over.
All right.
Okay. This one.
Okay. So this one is interesting, right? You had called out something that was kind of interesting in this article that I wasn't really, I mean, I was going through it and I was looking through it, but then when we talk about, so Azure Cost Management, basically as a tool, it's designed to help you kind of, keep an eye, control, and forecast your spend, right?
Yep, that's right. And a lot of times, one of the big values that you get, this is a soft value, is knowing what you're spending on your infrastructure.
Right.
Having clarity and being able to delegate that to the teams that are deciding, because you'll recall that in the old world, I guess, the infrastructure team supplied a bunch of hardware, and they paid for it essentially because they kind of designed it, and then everybody else got VMs on it, and maybe they got charged back.
Yeah, maybe there was charge back, there was look back, there was charge through, there was
It's hard because of oversubscription, but now if an application team writes an application, they get to decide the architecture, which in turn is the price.
They get
to decide
the cost.
Is the price.
Exactly.
The cost is the architecture.
Exactly.
So now we can show them, but then they say, okay, great, show me.
Yeah.
Show me, what is the cost? Well, Azure Cost Management is how you do that. So you can go to Azure Cost Management, go to a resource group and say, show me the cost. It'll show you how much you're spending per resource. It's actually really quite good.
So this is what's cool. So you just touched on something. So per resource, right? So you can create filtered budgets, right?
Yeah.
And that to me is intriguing because to your point, you can say, how much am I spending specifically on virtual machines? For example, would it be more cost effective if I went from virtual machines to PaaS, right? Or what would the cost savings be? Because traditionally it is a cost savings opportunity because people have a tendency to leave virtual machines on, right? Whereas PaaS is a lot more, scale in, scale out, elastic capability, that kind of thing. So I think it's cool that you can filter it out, you can break it down by that, or maybe you want to bucket it into data versus infrastructure, so you can know what your costs are in these different buckets, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think up to this point, you've been able to do the cost management and see those dimensions. Like you could go in there and look at it and say, well, how much did I spend? But what's new is the budget.
Right.
So in other words, if you said, I want a budget to email me when before we were able to say, email me when the cost of this resource group goes above X.
Exactly.
Now we can say, I want to set a budget when
VMs.
The VMs go above this budget.
Just my VMs or my VMs across resource groups?
That I
at a
don't
sub
know.
level?
I don't see why you couldn't do that, because then you would say,
for an entire organization it does.
Yeah, so you'd be, I don't know if you'd be able to just do, you might only be able to do the subscription level and then filter to VMs, or maybe you would be able to do 2 resource groups. I don't know. Hey, tell you what, I'm challenging somebody out there to go try this, and we can probably get them a.
Oh, we can get it. We can get some. We can get. Oh, we can. We can
tweet
get
us
swag.
if you figure that out.
Absolutely.
It's a little challenge. We sometimes call this an open hack.
Open hack.
When we just have challenges and then we see if people can do it. You don't get step-by-step instructions. So go see if you can figure that out.
I like it.
A challenge for the audience. No Microsoft CSAs. You are not eligible.
Right. No.
Because I know there's some people that watch the show. Not eligible.
Not eligible.
But anyway, so now you can create filtered budgets.
Absolutely.
So this is really great. This is the next kind of unpacking of the cost management here. So
well, and this is it's the more you know, right? It's you're empowering, and in addition to Azure Cost Management, we've got Azure Cost Management Labs, right? And Labs basically gives you a sneak preview of what's coming with Azure Cost Management.
Yep.
In this particular case, you can create customized views and save and share them. So you may want to share that particular view of, for example, your filtering mechanism that we talked about. You may want to share that across the BUs, that stuff. Being able to pull down charts as an image, you may have to present to a monthly or whatever it is, and you just need a chart showing trending this way, trending that way. Dark theme, great.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, awesome.
I mean, it's all the rage.
Yeah,
it is. Everybody wants dark theme.
It's what the
even
cool
Rick
kids
dresses
do.
in dark theme.
I know. Apparently, I'm in dark theme.
Dark mode.
Dark. Yeah.
But
evidently,
just to focus on the content here for just 1 second on the screen, you'll notice that the what's new here is right here is add filter.
Add
so I've
filter.
created a budget, and you'll
Yep.
notice that, by the way, when you put the months here, so this person, this one is creating a yearly budget, and it actually puts a dotted line across the budget
I
at
like
that
it.
level. Yeah,
Yep.
so you can see here that month to month to month, we're doing okay. But then you can say, I want to add a filter, which means add.
Yep, I like
so
that.
just that's kind of the change you'll see in the content. Yeah, good stuff. Cool
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. It's very necessary.
Yeah, it's not the thing you want to focus on most, except when you go to cloud, people start saying, okay, so
Well, how much is
we
it going to
spending?
cost?
Yeah, how much are we spending on that?
Right.
Can we reduce the price?
And when you go, that's
I don't
usually
know.
a
That's bad.
blocker, or it causes friction. I think when business people have a traditional way of looking at the world, or when they have a way on-prem that's effective, it's reliable, it's consistent, and then you're asking them to go do this cloud thing, and they're like, well, okay, but you're throwing everything that I normally do on its side. Well, here's your budget forecasting tool. Here's your how you break it out. Here's all those great things that you were used to doing on-prem.
Yep.
Absolutely. So yeah,
Awesome.
good stuff. Check it out. Again, if somebody has an answer to the question in regards to creating a filter across subs, across research groups, across where does that line of demarcation land, we can
Tweet
get you
us.
something. Absolutely.
Tweet us that you have an answer. Okay.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Azure Site Recovery.
Yep. So the interesting thing here is, and when you unpack this article, it talks about reducing your disaster recovery time with ASR. Okay, so ASR, Azure Site Recovery, allows you to basically create a backup vault, create basically a backup plan, if you will, right? So for wherever those virtual machines or services are existing, if it's on-prem, if it's in the cloud, you're going to create a plan. If it's on-prem, you do something with the Hyper-V host and that kind of stuff. If it's in the cloud, or VMware, absolutely. If it's in the cloud, it's a little bit less involved because you don't have to worry about the provisioning the agents and the provider and all that stuff.
Yep.
Anyway, the cool thing about this though is it's really all about taking a disaster recovery plan but then optimizing it, right? So identifying the right employee or admin who's going to handle that disaster recovery segment, setting your RTOs and RPOs. So your recovery time objective, recovery point objective, really important to understanding what your DR strategy is going to be, right? Without that,
you can't develop a plan.
No.
If you don't know the goals for RTO and RPO,
exactly,
you can't put together a plan.
No,
you
not
can't,
at all.
Because it might be good enough if your RTO is a month.
Right.
It might be good enough to just back it up.
Yep.
And call it good.
Right. And that's the point, right? So the next one is identifying the product or service based on those, right? So to your point, if I've got a long recovery time objective, I may just be backing up restoring databases.
Yeah.
If I've got a short recovery time objective, I might be using a multi-master replication for Cosmos DB. I might be using active geo replication for SQL, transactional replication. There's a bunch of different options, but you've got to know which option fits your RTO and RPO objectives.
And you got to figure out your RTO and RPO objective before you can even do any of that.
Exactly. So then after that, once you know the product or service, you need to know the software and hardware resources that you need. Then, of course, test it. I can't tell you how many horror stories I've heard from customers. We thought we had a DR strategy until we went to use it and it failed.
Yeah.
I test it. With ASR, you have an opportunity to very frequently test it. And then last but not least, it's a continuous feedback cycle, right? So you should be continuously looking to improve that cycle to get from where you are today to better, best, right? I mean, an ultimate is if you can basically improve upon your RTO and RPO without basically just by having a continuous feedback loop, who's going to lose? Everybody wins, right?
Yeah, and a lot of times, just as a side note, a lot of customers, they don't really have the resources to have a DR site.
Right?
And so, Azure is your chance to, at a low cost, have a DR site that you've never had before. Because I don't know, things like hurricanes happen.
What? Oh, as evidenced by what's going on right now.
Yeah.
As we speak.
I mean, and we have disaster events.
Yep.
Things can happen, but you can be prepared.
Absolutely.
With a multi-region strategy, and you don't have to invest in another colo lease or buying a bunch of new hardware.
OpEx expenditures to buy all kinds of equipment. Basically, you make the investment in ASR. You make the investment in provisioning a backup vault and some of the ancillary services, and now basically when you click failover,
it can actually do something like you have a plan. So there's a lot of good things for both customers with a lot of resources and high needs around DR, and customers who really never maybe had the resources to actually have a multi-location strategy. So
Yep,
good
absolutely.
Stuff, good
it's
stuff.
great stuff. It's great stuff. So that kind of brings us up to the top
Yeah.
of the hour. We've had some good stuff today. Mark, if anybody's got questions in regards to the content provided today, how can they get a hold of you?
You can find me on Twitter at mgarner.
Okay.
Or you can email me, mgarner@microsoft.com. Either way, just fine.
Awesome. And you can reach me at rick@microsoft.com, or you can reach us at our Azure Flash News Twitter handle. Always happy to respond, and always encourage people to go out. To your point, look for us on the different sites: Stitcher, Google, iTunes, YouTube, all over the place.
Yeah, and so trying to keep YouTube up to date. But one more thing, I don't know if we really mentioned it, but we have moved the show archive, show notes, etc. to GitHub.
Yep.
It's really easy for us to just kind of update it. And honestly, if you see a typo, just do a pull request. Yeah. Anyway, so go check there. If you go to azureflashnews.com, it should direct you right to the GitHub repo. So please feel free to go check that out. We're just using Markdown for the stuff. So it's kind of fun. It's a little more of a developer feel.
It's very developer-centric, which I like.
Yeah, it's very cool. Anyway.
Yeah, and
all right,
as usual, thank you to the MTC, Emily
Yeah,
Mackmiller, Doug Splinter, and the whole crew here.
The crew.
And I think, well, next week I won't be around, but I'm sure you'll find somebody handsomer and smarter. And we'll be in London next week. I'll be in London.
Cheers.
Yeah, I know, eating my full English breakfast every morning.
Yes. Fried toast.
That's right. Well, tomatoes and toast and beans and all kinds of goodness. Yeah. Anyway, so having said that, somebody looks forward to chatting with you same time, same place next week. But until then, keep your fingers on the keyboards and your head in the clouds.
Thanks, everybody.